Morning, everybody. I'm Carrie. Basically, I am working with the Internal Audit Forum at the moment, and one of the important points we want to get across is not leaving internal audit till the year end. There's so much that can be done through your day-to-day work as a clerk, as an RFO, that will actually streamline your internal audit at the end of the year. Got a lot of new clients last year, very afraid of their internal audit. There is no need for that because you should be in control of your internal audit. JPAG produce our practitioner's guide. It's important that you familiarise yourself with this guide. It's renewed every year. Structure your council practice around this guide. Make it your go-to Bible. John should be sharing the presentation with you afterwards. I'll put links in there so you will be able to get it. Please don't hesitate to ask any questions through the presentation, because I do know there was a couple of points that confused people in the speed round. So please ask a question, feel free to. So for the internal audit within the practitioner's guide, pages 27 to 32 explain exactly what you need for each point of the internal audit on the AGAR. And this is what the internal auditor is going to be looking at. The one area that causes a lot of apprehension is your trust funds with your charitable. It's the one area I would encourage you to go to the partnership that I can't think of his name, sorry, who helps you with charitable accounts and ensures that you're doing things correctly, because it's one of the things that was flagged by the external auditor, that this is still being done incorrectly by councils and not separated out. So, selecting an internal audit provider. This is what the Internal Audit Forum wants to stress. It's really important that you choose correctly and wisely. As one of the ladies said this morning, internal auditors don't understand the sector. And the internal audit is two parts. One, financial, and secondly is governance. And the problem is the Act says competent person. What is a competent person? If you choose someone that's only financially competent but doesn't understand governance, are they competent to do your internal audit? I did an audit last year of council that had beautiful accounts on Scribe, but the auditor didn't understand Scribe, didn't make no effort to understand Scribe, so was re-entering all the data. That's not allowed. That's not being then auditing independently. So it's ensuring you choose somebody that understands your system. One of the hardest systems to understand is Realtor. So ensure you choose an internal auditor that can understand it, pull the reports off that they need to audit competently. So we've said this a little bit, the need to be independent, the need to be competent, the need to understand not only the finance, but the governance, and be able to read the system, not just read the reports that you've pulled off, because they need to be able to do tests on the system to ensure that we've got balances and that we have got governance there. What the council needs to remember is that the internal audit is part of their own internal controls. It is proving that they are managing their public money, and the public money is being held in safe hands. And it's their exercise of telling at the end of the year they've done everything correctly. So what can you do? Well, be organised. Don't just leave the internal audit to the end of the year, to the 1st of April. Think about it all the way through the year. And I'm going to go through a little bit of that now. I've added slides of how you can structure your work so that you are ready for your internal audit. So that basically on the 1st of April, if you've got your bank statement and your online banking, you can just say to him, my internal audit, let's go for it. What you need to ensure is, for the financial side, is that your accounts balance to the bank statement, to the previous year's closing AGAR balance. If you use Scribe to its full potential, it's a breeze. And even me last week, I lost 40p. I was fiddling between previous years to do budgets and I lost 40p. Well, wonderful Tracy helped me find it. And it was due to a council that were reconstructing 5 years accounts to sort out for the external audit. And if you use Scribe correctly, it does it for you. Okay. So here I have just brought in an AGAR form. As you can see, the manual one, there was a rounding error here of £1. There is a rounding tolerance of £2 with the external auditors. But you don't get this with Scribe. Scribe balances, so you shouldn't get that. I've circled the fixed asset point here. We'll talk a little bit more about this later on. But as you can see on the Scribe, I've restated. They had a fixed asset here of 133,800. I've restated to 54,672.95. What came out last night was some comments from the external auditors following a review. And they are saying that we need to be looking at our assets more closely. And here in this council, they basically guessed a figure for their streetlights. And they had 130 odd streetlights and they guessed a figure for each, but they'd only paid about 30,000 over in transfer fees. So it was a ridiculous amount. It needs to be a provable amount, your fixed assets. It needs to be tangible. And this is what the external auditors are saying. They're also saying that if you decide to restate, you need to look at when you're restating. The council I audited last year had a figure of 50,000 of group assets. Over a certain amount of large group assets, we should be able to go see and view it. They hadn't a clue what these assets were. It was an old legacy amount. So I said to them, if you can't prove it to me, you need to write it off. And this is what you need to be looking at, is closely to your fixed assets. Can you prove you've actually got them? Your accounts, you need to ensure that they are clear and transparent. In Scribe, as you have realtors, you've got your cost centres and your cost code. Through the next couple of slides, I'm going to show a bit of how I like to set up and how I've talked through with other people. This makes it not only transparent, but if you've got counsellors, you often get counsellors that are good person, good at working in the community, but do not understand accounts. So it's about having accounts that are provable. So in here, when Scribe was initially set up for me, they had one cost centre that was for income. Now, the way I like to do it is if you've got a cost centre like allotments, I like to put the income against the purchases. So it's a clear picture that you can put in front of councillors or the public so they can see how much a certain activity is costing or bringing in. The same could be said for a hall that hires your cemetery. Yes, you can do it by building reports, but to me, this is a little bit more intuitive. And you also can go back to just showing your grand income by pulling reports out of income. Your cemetery, I do it the same way, and this helps you see how much your cemetery is costing with all its costs and all its different incomes. You do the same with halls or what other assets you have bringing income in. We have other income that would never sit in another area, and this is how often other councils do. They put all their income in here. So you've got your precept, your interest, car park, VAT refund, that balance should balance off zero when you're in Scribe. That's just ways of making your account very transparent, showing where your public money is going to different centres. There may be reasons you do it differently, but that is just an idea of how I found it helps the council I've been in and some of the councils that I've audited, so they can see their accounts much clearer and easier. And then, of course, you'll have your general administration that is basically all cost. I don't put the precept in here because the precept covers lots of centres, so that's in its income place on its own. Sundries and miscellaneous. People do like these, but avoid them. So if we go back a slide, try and put cost centre that is named, which shows exactly what it is. You may have lots there that have very little in, but it's more important that you have those than we end up with a miscellaneous. They're just a dumping ground, and they prevent transparency. People don't know what they are, whereas if the cost centres, cost codes say exactly what they are, it's what it says on the tin. Okay, so going on to a little bit of governance. Each minute should state the last, each set of minutes should state the last back reconciliation date. You may have not been able to do it just before the meeting, but the last time you were able to do so. And it also should state the balance at the bank at that time. The payment list in the minutes should show who the council is paying and the amount the council has agreed to pay. Minutes will often say payments agreed, but don't show what was agreed. Remember, your minutes are governments and they are towards transparency. So a couple of examples that I saw during my audit, these are payment lists. These are not acceptable. So these got a no on the AGAR. Doesn't tell us who the invoices were for, doesn't tell us the amount. So what was the actual invoice? There was no coding that you could actually trace it through to say that was the invoice in that meeting. There's no amount, there's no supplier, and there's no power used. So they were minutes that are unacceptable. This is a payment list that is lawful. It identifies who is being paid, the actual invoice, the supplier, the amount, the cost centre. Can you see the second one up from the bottom, 34? Clerk salary. Clerk salary needs to be in the list of payments. Get lots of comments about GDPR. GDPR doesn't trump transparency. It doesn't need to say your name, but it needs to say clerk salary and the amount that was agreed to be paid. Attaching files to Scribe makes the year end a breeze. It It's all here for you. So if you actually attach the invoice to the payment in Scribe, you're not hunting for it at the year end. You're also proving that that payment is paying that invoice. If you haven't got the general power of competence, which we'll discuss a little bit later, you've got your powers there to prove what you're paying that invoice for. So use the system of what you've got there. Any questions so far? Don't be afraid to ask. John, stop me if you say anything in chat. Jeff, can you unmute? John, can you unmute for me?
Ah, yes. Yeah, we've got one question from Jeff. Jeff, do you want to ask it? Unmute yourself. We always like to see you and hear you.
Hi, Carrie, I noticed before when you were showing the income streams for allotments and cemetery and then allocating costs, how would you allocate something like the clerk's salary?
That would, right. In one of the councils, I actually split it down because this was a bone of contention of the hours. So if you do analyse your hours between the work you do, I split it within Scribe. If you don't, I would put it in just the general expenditure.
Right, so you need to actually analyse your time as you go.
Well, if your council wants you to.
Right.
That's personal choice to your council and you. If you're wanting to prove that the cemetery is costing a lot of time to you, you may wish to analyse your hours out.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. We got a question from Leslie. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask?
Yes, hello there. I've been in post since May.
Yep.
So I've come from the education sector. So this is, although I know finance is, as you all know, is very different here.
Yep.
And I'm asking about those powers that you've just circled. So
Yep.
I'm on Scribe and I'm learning to know how to use it. But
Yep.
even with the previous clerk, that has never been used. Am I supposed to be putting a power on for everything that goes on to Scribe?
Best practice is, but if you don't have the time to physically do everyone, I would put the powers on for things that are not every day. So say the clerk salary, that's dead simple. We know that's within the council's remit to spend. You maybe wouldn't put the power there. If you were spending in Bloom, which is often on many councils, we have to prove how we're doing it. So this may be open spaces. Christmas lights is a contentious one. So things that are not quite as straightforward of why you've got the power to spend, I would put the power there so that if the internal auditor or a member of the public challenges it, you've got the answer there of why your council felt they had the power to spend.
Thank you.
But I love it when I see them all filled in. And yes, I'm guilty that I haven't used all mine, and John will tell on me.
Cool. Thank you, Leslie. Jane, you've got a question?
Yes. Did I hear right that you said that this monthly salary that you put forward for the clerk should be reported at the meeting,
Yes.
the amount?
Yes.
Because I've been told different.
I know. And it's on the...
The clerk that trained me said that the only way that you can provide information, it's like the annual amount. I did speak to the ICO about this as well, because I rung them up, and they've considered it acceptable, as well as my internal auditor. So
yeah,
it's a bit strange.
It is a bone of contentious. Personally, and the IAF believe it should be on for transparency. If you've received it in writing from the ICO and your internal auditor, just put that with your evidence on Scribe.
No, I telephoned them up basically and asked the question and posed it, and that was the response I got. So obviously
it's not in writing, it didn't happen.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. If they don't put the pen to paper and won't email the response,
But yeah, you're not
Yeah.
mentioning the name of the clerk. So, but I mean,
No.
I guess in some councils there's only one employee, so it's
Yes,
easy
but
to work out. But you're not mentioning the name. Oh,
but it's on the AGAR anyway, which is a public record. And freedom of information, you'd have to supply it. The total salary is out there in public domain.
okay, cool. Carlton, you got your hand up?
Yeah, morning, everybody. I think it's a similar question, so perhaps you've already answered it, Carrie. It's about putting salaries to the council for approval. I resent doing that because it's in my
Okay.
contract what my salary is. I report the payment of it. I'm the only employee. I say it's mine. You know, the payment
Yeah.
was to me, but I put it. I like to put it to note the payments that will be made rather than approve, because the council surely would be acting illegally if they refuse to pay.
You are correct there. You can you put the payments on for approval that have not previously approved and note the salary, because if your annual salary has been agreed, it's a contractual it's contractual payment. The only benefit of having it on the payment list is that they're showing internal control of reviewing the payments as they go, of what's gone out the bank.
Can I ask a supplementary question as well?
Yeah, no problem.
I'm in a very small parish, well, two very small
Yeah.
parishes. One of them has a precept of 15,000 a year. And the monthly bank reconciliations that I do might have 2 transactions on them,
Yeah.
might have 7 or 8. Is there anything to stop me publishing the bank reconciliations on our website, perhaps as an annex to the minutes?
I've done that.
Yeah.
I've done that. They're in the appendix to the minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, just looking at that, it's easier to sort of store somewhere publicly available rather than have to
Yeah.
kind of try and find
Yeah.
them on a computer. Okay,
Exactly.
that's great. Thank you.
awesome. I've got one more question from Sherry, and then we'll have to let Carrie carry on. Yeah, with the rest of her talk. Sherry.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about the asset register. Again, I've taken over from the clerk and didn't have any proper handover. There is no copy of, we don't appear to have an assets register, but there is an amount on the AGAR. I understand that the assets refer to a bus shelter and also a Millennium Stone. I can prove that they exist, but what I can't prove is that they actually belong to the parish council. Just welcome some advice on what I should do about that, because obviously I'm concerned about liability.
Yeah, exactly. Are you able to hunt back any records?
No, all I've been able to see is from previous minutes of the ones that I have of references, and we've got very dated, literally just like a paper cash book. We're not on sort of proper Scribe or anything yet.
Yeah.
So I can see that there were like payments were made, like there was payments for engraving and things like that. But what I can't sort of reconcile is those amounts with the amount that's on the AGAR.
Yeah, exactly. So if there's been any payments made towards them, I think it would be assumed that those are your assets. It would be then ensuring that you create a list in your action plan, creating a list to ensure that the insurance is aware of the assets that you are claiming, and put it to the council to agree what the assets are. Then you may be looking at restating the actual amount to provable assets.
So did you say reinstating the original amount?
Reinstating the amount, so you might value it, then at the next AGAR restating the amount to a provable value.
Okay, thank you.
Cool, thank you, Sherry. We'll have to continue because I
Yeah.
personally do have a hard stop at 12 o'clock, so I've got external
Sorry.
meeting. No worries, back to you, Carrie.
Okay, so payments, is the clerk making the payment right here? So within here, this basically is a little appendment to the financial regulations. So basically, this is to do with internet banking. There is what came to light last year. There was a lot of people with internet banking. Some councils had it that the clerk put the payment on, then 2 councillors authorised it. Not all banks allow this. So the clerks are putting payments on and authorising them. So this is basically just a financial risk assessment that, as the previous question about the payments, it allows the councillors to cross-check the payments that have been made in the bank to what has gone out. So it's a bit of added extra. So when you see the PowerPoint, read through this, and it's just about adding internal control to how your payments run in your council. And don't hesitate to ask me any questions on this by email if you want a little bit more understand. It's basically to cover you if you're doing payments without councillors authorising the payments through the bank. We spoke about this, ensuring that you have a power to prove what you're to spend. In Scribe, we've got our drop-down box. Okay, so we have the LN legal topic note 31E. So we have the S137. This is the power that allows us to spend on something that we don't have a natural power to spend. So the legal topic note comes out every year, telling us the amount per elector that we're allowed to spend. Should have a note within the minutes of what your S137 spend is, so that you're keeping an eye on items that are outside your power to spend, that you've not gone over your S137 spend. It's something I've found quite often people have not looked at. Okay. Budgeting time's coming. In the next few months. Some of you may be in North Yorkshire where they're insisting that we have our preset demand in by the 31st of December, which is a month earlier than we normally would. You need to, in your minutes, show that the whole council, not just the financial committee, has agreed the budget for the year, and that they have agreed the preset for the year. Often I find that this is not minuted, so that would mean a no on your AGAR. So going on a little bit more about government's ongoing risk assessment, how do we prove it if we don't note it in the minutes, i.e. the status of our assets? So what I've done with an extremely small council is that we have park benches, bins, notice boards, phone box with DVD, salt bins. Each month, the councillors come to the meeting, they have a job of going past the assets and we note their condition. So this is a simple way of a very small council showing that they have done their risk assessments and they've noted it in the minutes. Obviously, on a very big council, this would be just too arduous in the minutes. So you'd have a formal log. You'd probably have a caretaker where you'd have a formal log. And I think John has got something coming out that would make this even easier soon that I'm hoping he's going to let us play with.
Yeah.
Attached to Scribe. So this is something that I've used for now, but I think this Scribe will take over this method. But it's just showing that we've done our risk assessments. The other thing is your risk management. If you've got playgrounds, you'll probably have ROSPA reports in other areas. There's other companies, tree surveys. It's having copies of those. And when you pay the invoice for ROSPA, attach your report to Scribe. It's there then for the internal auditor to see with the invoice. And your tree surveys. I've spelled that wrong. Apologies. Insurance. So this is something I hope that John is going to fiddle with in this new section that I'm hoping he'll let me play with. Is in the asset register, there is a current value at the moment, but I'd like to see the insurance value there, because you may have something that was bought 10, 20 years ago, cost £1,000, but to actually replace it now would be £5,000. So it's insured at its replacement cost. And it's being able to prove your asset value against your insurance register value to say why you're paying that amount of insurance, and that you're budgeting what your insurance is for. Your fidelity, this is often a thing that is not discussed by council. This should be set at 50% of your precept. And this is to do with, basically, if the RFO runs off with your money, it covers the council. So it's ensuring that this is the correct level. And there's a link there that talks a little bit more of fidelity insurance. Okay, so governance again. Thinking about your minutes. There should be consider, receive, note. The council can only resolve a decision from when they consider an item. They can't do it from a receive or note. Often I read minutes in my internal auditor that a decision has been made on an item that's that they've received information into an area on the agenda, but that item has not been strictly shown on the agenda of what it's for. So a person has not been able to see that agenda. So say on the agenda to receive any ongoing issues in the village, and then someone comes and says, well, the playing field needs this. You cannot make a decision on that playing field. It has to be noted for the next agenda. So any member of the public that needs to come along who's interested in that matter can be there to hear what's being said by the council. And this is the sort of thing I'd be looking for in minutes that have a lawful decision being made. Basic policy. So for anyone that's come to the council, it can be daunting looking at what policies are in place. Now, the financial regulations are in red. They are the ones that are legally needed to be held by the council. The others are there to help the running of council. And these are the basic ones that I'm looking to see that are in place in a council. Obviously, you may have more than this in your council. Financial regulations. Now, this is a point that confused many of you on the speed round. Financial regulations are dated 2018. But if you remember back to February 23, they updated the contract amount to deal with the VAT element of when you had to go to the tendering system. So there was an update to the 2018 regulations. Now, this was all sent out in North Yorkshire by the YLCA. I do understand, and this is something I'm going to take to the IAF, that NALC are not actually showing the latest ones. So this is if I send a copy of the ones I've got to John, they can be emailed out to everyone, hopefully, or on the Clerk corner, something like that.
Yeah, we can do that. It will do that.
Yeah. So this is what I was meaning. Yes, they are going through review, the financial regulations, but the update was due to this 30,000 contracts. And again, the standing orders needed slight change because, again, it was 30,000 contracts. Okay. Now, when I was doing audits in April, I would hear, oh, we haven't updated yet because we update all our policies in the May meeting. But your financial regulations are your legal policy. And if you're an extremely large council working very closely to that financial level of 25, 30,000, you could be actually breaking your regulation if you haven't updated. So this is why we're trying to get it across to you. If you don't have strict deadlines of when you do things in your council and you feed things in as you get changes, you'll find you're more prepared for your internal audit because you'll have already done things. You'll have got yourself prepared. So you're not leaving it to think, oh my goodness, I need to do all this for my internal audit for the end of year. Do things as you go through the year, especially with your governance items. General power of confidence. This is for the people who have completed their SILCA and have got 2/3 of their councillors that are elected. This is your power of first resort and basically allows you to spend money on anything that you are legally allowed to spend money on, apart from 2 basic items. One is anything to do with religion. And secondly, anything that is a private entity. And this is one of the things people, some councils slip upon. I have one council that has a hall that has been loaned to the community to be run by a management committee for the community, but the hall still belongs to a private family. The council have given over 30,000 in refurbishment for that building. That was an unlawful grant because that building belongs to a private person, even though it does a community events. It's up to the management committee to either make money, enough money to refurb it, or go back to that private person to make that building fit for purpose. So be very careful with your general power of competence of the 2 areas you can't spend on. The other area that's a very grey area is when we have got our closed churchyards. There's a grey area then if that is still an open church. We cannot be paying towards allowing someone to go to worship. So if the path is only used to get to the church door and not to get to the burial ground, it's not upkeep of the burial ground. So you're there thinking, oh my goodness, there's so much there to do. But you can't do it all in a day. So when I get people who come to me and they're terrified of the internal audit, I say to them, right, we know what's there. We know what we need to do. We know that there may be some no's, but it's not being afraid of no's on the AGAR. We then build an action plan of what needs to be done so that when the internal audit puts a no on the AGAR, they can say the council is fully aware that this item is not meant, it's been action planned and is going to be built on in the future. There has been a change of clerk, there's been a change in councils, and they're working towards getting everything in order. It's probably one of the most beneficial documents to you. Something that's come out of the external audit review. Now, there's general reserves and then there's earmarked reserve and your ring fenced. Now, this is something we're going to have to be extremely careful of in the future because I believe they will start pulling back on our precept demands if we've got reserves that are unclassified. It's extremely important that you have funds that you have in reserve either ring fenced or earmarked, and that you haven't got more than 3 to 12 months of your precept in general reserves. And remembering that if you've got ring fence funds such as SIL, there is only certain products, certain areas this can be spent on. So if you run low on your general reserve, you cannot go into a ring-fenced amount, such as SIL, to build up your general reserve. Final note of why I wanted to bring this to you with the Internal Forum is to help you improve your accounts, prove that we're keeping public money safe, that we promote high internal audits, foster good working relationships with our clerks, RFOs, internal auditors, external auditors. The one thing we are pushing for is a two-way stream of communication. And that's basically it. There was a lot of information there. Hope I've not confused you even further. Taking the fear away from internal audit and help you get a little bit ahead of the game.